Hey guys, welcome back. So now getting back into X-Force and the many entanglements therein. And I ain't just talking about like vines and bushes and weeds and stuff. And I mean, I am, but I'm also talking about Jean, Logan, and Scott. So let's get into all this. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch your spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so prior to this point on this playlist, we talked about a number of the issues that have been boiling up throughout X-Force. Because on one hand, you have the case of Black Tom Cassidy, who's been going through a bit of a power trip that has a direct connection to his responsibility in Krakoa, as well as how his mutant powers contribute to that. And to summarize his issue, he mainly has the responsibility of being the alarm system of Krakoa, but because his powers of environmental control connect him both mentally and physically down to his nervous system, it's then caused issues with him mentally, with him sharing his mind with Krakoa, which has him sharing all of Krakoa's grief, which recently were the long departures of Arakko, the other half of the island which recently returned but for a long time was banished by Apocalypse. But for Black Tom, for a long time he had to share this grief, in addition to his personal guilt from Charles Xavier being assassinated on Krakoan soil, which from then has very much been his breaking point and had him a bit unstable ever since. But regardless of him being in that condition, Beast has more or less dragged him into action to help out X-Force out in Terra Verde. And if anybody out there has ever been needed at a time when you're unstable, you probably kind of get where Black Tom's coming from. But with Beast sending Black Tom out into the field, he's unaware of what exactly X-Force is dealing with at the moment, because when Beast stepped away to get Black Tom, X-Force had been dragged into this mysterious temple, to where this time we just catch the team wandering around, and with doing so trying to finish their investigation. But also between Wolverine and Domino, like they're still having the whole argument about her having her painful memories erased. And usually Wolverine's not the type to hold up an argument like this, but in this case he does, and mainly because he cares about Domino, but also for him because he spent so many years trying to remember all the memories which were taken from him, which is why for him this whole thing is not a light subject. And while they're in this tomb, their argument of course distracts Wolverine from stepping into a booby trap, because what's a mysterious tomb without some booby traps? Like I'm sure even Minecraft Dungeons has some kind of danger in there. But when this happens, Kid Omega is able to get him out, but not long after that they then come across this huge wall that has a number of glyphs which are also covered with weeds that appear to have been there for centuries. And when they get there, they do take a moment to try to figure out what it's saying, because at a glance it seems to have some type of message about a sacrifice which ends in some type of transition or transformation. But before they can really get to figure out the whole message, not only do they not notice the wall looking back at them, but when this happens just seconds later, both Kid Omega and Wolverine are snatched up, which then leaves Domino alone in the dark, because prior to this point Kid Omega was their light source. But even when this happens, Domino figures out a solution fairly quickly, because she uses the gauntlet which she was given by Forge, which was crafted with Krakoan technology, and she calls for it to transform into night vision so that she can then follow Wolverine's trail of blood and find out what sort of entanglement this temple has pulled them into. But when we take a look in there, we find out that Ak, the punishing Olmec deity, he has now been recently summoned. And at this point in time, Beast believes that this is partially his fault, because even though the people of Terra Verde have been using telephoronic technology for over thousands of years, with doing this there are some discoveries that they just haven't found yet, like for example breaking the coding of the cellular data. But in the case of the nation of Krakoa, who has made the discoveries, their technology is then years ahead, or at least it was. And really all the way up to the point to where Beast attempted to kill the president's son in order to protect Terra Verde's image, but with making that failed attempt on the son of the president's life, he had pretty much handed over a bunch of Krakoan technology over to Terra Verde's telefloronic network, and that mistake then led to someone resurrecting Ak. And as far as information, that's all that Beast knows up to this point, because the last bit of information he got is when the team had found that the president had been killed also, so he has no clue that they're in the middle of this sacrifice and transformation into ascension type of thing. And at this point, Domino was lucky enough to find Logan and Kid Omega, but with that, only so lucky because she got snatched up also. But in the case of Beast, who sees his error as a win, because at this point he's clearly in denial, and he believes that the information which he has given over to Terra Verde, that it'll just turn around and be a contribution, because he'll be able to study them as an enemy and gain more intel from that. But it's here where he's met by Jean, who's walking in at the time where she can clearly see that Beast is in over his head, with him trying to make contact with the members of X-Force out in the field but failing to do so. But that's not why she's here, and in fact the reason that she came was actually to confront Beast and let him know that she had been keeping an eye on his thoughts, and with doing so not only did she find find out what he had did to the president's son, but also she is pissed because he did not share that information. And though there might be this question of her invading his mind and whether that may be right or wrong, but at the same time his error has validated her reasoning for prying into his thoughts. But on top of that, she's also insulted because it's almost like Beast thought that he was just so smart and that there was just so much information in that brain that she would just never find that secret. And I mean, really, if you look at it that way, it sounds like a challenge. But it's here where Beast tells Jean that she's looking at things in the wrong perspective, because ultimately as a strike team, if they need to kill one person in order to save millions, then it's no different than like a vaccine that may harm one person but then be the cure for millions of others. And it's kind of like your trolley dilemma to like, do you kill one to save the many? But in the case of Beast, it's not a dilemma. He says just do it. But as far as Black Tom in Terra Verde, like when he arrives, he is getting owned by the telephoronic creatures outside of this temple. And when we see him here, like he even admits himself, like this ain't how it's supposed to go. Like in any other circumstance, Black Tom should be able to control these things. And that's what I thought would be the case when he got here. But as it turns out, because Beast had given these creatures more or less a version of Krakoan's source code, at this point their commands have locked them out and they're only taking orders from Ak. And with doing this, like in other words, they pretty much just copied the operating system of a portion of Krakoa's biotechnology, and after that, all they changed was the password. But not long after we see Black Tom struggling in the field, soon after both Jean and Sage have made their way there. And when they get there, Sage, she really dressed for the part, like she got her whole safari gear on, like she's ready for an adventure. But as it turns out, with the three of them there, it's actually a perfect combination, because immediately when they get there, Jean then combines their three minds together so that with doing this they can use all of their powers as one. And it's brilliant, with Black Tom connecting to the plants and then Sage hacking their whole system. But so now from here to break down like what's going on the inside, like it's bad. Like it's really bad, because what we had seen from the glyphs which were on the wall inside of the temple, they had actually symbolized a sacrificial process that's similar to what we had seen with Krakoa feeding off a psychic energy. But in the case of Ak, it's a bit different, because his ritual from thousands of years ago, it is done the same but with feeding on physical human bodies, and in this case converting them into a form of compost which then produces spores, which visually just looks absolutely crazy, like straight up horror flick type stuff. But also it kind of begs the question, like between Ak and Telefloronics in comparison to Krakoa, like which one is right and which one is wrong? And like, is there a definitive answer to one being right and one being wrong, or is that answer mainly depicted from the perspective if like you're the food or the fertilizer, as opposed to the creature or the predator that needs to feed? Because on one end it's absolute terror, but on the other end it's just divine order, or it's just nature as it should be. But at this point with Jean, Sage, and Black Tom, Jean has now been able to connect the two of them all the way through to the top, and with doing this she's made a connection through to Logan, and she's decided to use this ritual or this process that they're attempting on the others, which really at this point only has Logan left standing, and of course only because of his healing factor. But with seeing this, what Jean ends up doing is using Logan as a Trojan horse, and with Black Tom physically plugged in, she then gives that access over to Sage in order to just shut the whole thing down, which for the time being solves the problem in Terra Verde. But so now from here, let's get into the real entanglements, because you guys have been leaving so many comments from Dawn of X on the playlist and even in the X-Men Dawn of X Big Spill. And the main question you guys have been asking is what has been going on between Logan, Jean, and Scott. And if I may, I want to talk about this a little bit here, because after this recent mission in Terra Verde, Jean goes to meet Logan at the Broken Baths in Krakoa, and she's mainly going there just to talk. But from the moment she arrives, Logan is finishing her sentences, because when she gets there, Logan immediately is like, you quit X-Force, I know. And he makes it clear that he didn't think that because she's not strong enough, but he knows her well enough to say that the moral conflict that it causes, like it's really just making her uncomfortable. But so now on the flip side, Jean had recently had this conversation with Scott, and if you guys remember, not too long ago when Jean and Scott had this conversation, Jean had to spell it out for him. And I mention it not even to put too much emphasis or comparison between Scott or Logan to say how observant one or the other may be, but rather just shine a bit of light on how personal the communication is between Jean and the both of them. Because also, if you guys remember, around this same time, Jean was having a conversation with Logan across the room while she was there verbally talking to Scott, which also brings me to the whole room situation. Because in the summer house, amongst all the rooms, only Scott, Logan, and Jean's room have a direct doorway to one another. And matter of fact, it's not even a doorway, it's just open. And so many of you guys have been asking me, like, what does this mean? Like, what is going on? And I've only got one word: entanglements. And hopefully we will get more information on this before August. And that's just saying that we get more information in July. That's it. That's all. That's all I'm saying. But before we go, I just want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below to where you can head to patreon.com/DopeSpill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and keep it PG, cause I don't want to have to block nobody or send emails out to anyone's mama or daddy, cause you out here talking reckless. But with that being said, Discord coming soon, so look out for that link on Twitter, and also I'll let you guys know here, and I'll add it to the description to that video and others moving forward. But till then, I'll see you guys on the next one. Alright, later.